mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
You know, it seems like yesterday was Monday, but now it's already Friday. I guess as you get older, time just accelerates, or the busier you are, the faster time goes by. I mean, the years feel like heartbeats. And seems like just yesterday I started my fight against the New World Order. At least it feels like that today. Sometimes it feels like 1,000 years ago. Welcome, my friends. It is Friday, the 11th day of June, 2004. And they're getting ready to lay Ronald Reagan to rest, our 40th president. And I don't think I've ever seen such media coverage of an event of this nature. So I guess we can talk a little bit about it today if you'd like to. It's wide open phones, Open Line Friday. And yes, I do have a couple guests coming on. Joel Skousen, the nephew of Leon Skousen, the expert on the New World Order. I really respect his opinions. We'll be talking about the supposed upcoming terror attacks that the globalists are sure to launch unless we expose who stands to gain from terror and who's carried out the past terror attacks, who's joining us in the second hour. In the third hour, one of the folks from the Sunshine Project that researches government documents and does a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, we're going to be covering race-specific bioweapons and biological weapons generally. Because the government claims this big program, BioShield, this what did they get, $5.8 billion. Bush wanted $6.4 billion. He got $5.8 billion to build 36 level 4 bioweapons labs, many of them in your town or city. And the Baltimore News a few years ago called it, facilities that would produce thousands of gallons of liquid death, I believe was the quote. Ebola, race-specific weapons, you name it, weaponized smallpox, gearing up. And we have PNAC, back in 2000, in their September release, Dick Cheney talking about Saddam isn't a threat, he's a convenient pretext to secure the oil supplies. It'll be a great military launch base. In that same Rebuilding America's Defenses September 2000 document that's on their website right now, they don't even hide this, pnac.info, that we need to legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons. And, of course, the group I really respect that told us about the B-2 bomber 5 years before it was announced in the late 80s, Jane's Weapons Encyclopedia out of England has put out alerts and warnings, which you never really see them do, that the U.S., England, and Israel, as well as Russia, have been developing these for decades. And we're talking about bioweapons that will kill every black person on Earth, every white person on Earth, every Asian on Earth. It will kill everyone. And they say they have weapons that will kill every human on Earth. And they're just breeding this. And then every few years we see a report of, the weaponized foot and mouth got released from the big weapons lab in Wiltshire, England, Porton Down. By the way, Dr. David Kelly was the head scientist there. Another one of those microbiologists dying. But this is the biggest story, really. That they just claim, it's a level 4 bioweapons lab, but somebody snuck in and got it, and that's what got into the cows and the sheep, and they killed 8 million sheep, 4 million cows. The weaponized foot and mouth didn't, but the government killing them so it wouldn't spread did, and it was the government that did that. So they produce the stuff that if it gets out, it'll kill everybody. And they're telling you that we need to give up our liberties to stop terrorists. They're the terrorist people. Oh, my goodness. I've got all this news in front of me. Ronald Reagan lying in state for the last day today. Ray Charles, who I was a fan of, kind of the prototype of Stevie Wonder, I guess, died yesterday. A bunch of Iraq news, a bunch of police state, Big Brother, World ID card news. But this happens a lot of times. I start the show, and then just suddenly a topic that I've been studying and looking at that I think is really important pops into my head again, and I want to talk about that first because we are going to get the Sunshine Project on. They, again, research secret documents and public documents and do FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, and they're ringing the alarm bell about Western governments, the Russians, the British, the Israelis, the U.S., developing race-specific bioweapons. We're talking about weaponized viruses and bacteria that are already 90% fatal when they're not weaponized, and then now they're weaponizing them, where you get a 99% kill rate in many cases, and kills you rather quickly. Because you look at the big picture here, the globalist at the college professor level, let's say at the department head level, most of the big department heads at major universities, UT, Princeton, Yale, MIT, I don't want to say most, let's say, again, 99%, I really haven't found one of them that isn't, are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And then you have most of the heads of banking and media, and other key positions in government, most of your committee chairmen in the House and Senate, almost every president. In fact, the last president we had who wasn't CFR, or Trilateral Commission, or CFR, or Bilderberg Group, was Ronald Reagan, but his cabinet was packed with him. Again, the point I'm trying to make here is that when you're at a department-level discussion, because we've gone and sat in on these UT meetings, and almost every symposium is called the New World Order, World War IV, the future of the New World Order. I mean, most of the symposiums they have, and literally they'll be like former CI directors, some professors in a room. It's open to the public, but no one shows up. We show up and shoot video of it. It's incredible. When they're talking about New World Order this, New World Order that. But when you really get into these discussions and you read the white papers they write and you look at what the elite are saying and doing, it's basically this. Bioweapons are more threatening to society than nuclear weapons, and because of the advances in technology and the cracking of the human genome that the U.S. government made public in its joint exercise with IBM, due to this, we now, at this current date, face total extinction at the extreme end of things, and billions of people dying on the lesser end of the scale. And because of this great threat, we must have a tyrannical world government. No government must have sovereignty. Every industry must be run and regulated and inspected by armed UN guards. In any biotech factory, we've got to do this to stop total extinction. And let me tell you, that sells the bright 165 IQ graduate students being groomed to be servants inside the New World Order. And this is the first thing they're told. And by the way, over the years, I've talked about how one of the biggest radio networks tried to hire me, and I met with some of their executives 5-6 years ago, and this is the spiel I got. And I've talked to others, and they've gotten this same spiel. But, and you know, to an intelligent, informed person, it sounds reasonable. My gosh, we've got to have world government because of the proliferation of nuclear weapons and chemical weapons, but more importantly, biological weapons, race-specific, or systems that will kill any human that comes in contact with it, period. Though they say statistically, even if it's the most deadly weapon imaginable, some people will have a natural immunity, though a very small percentage. So we look at that picture and we say, okay, world government is the answer. Alex, then why aren't you for world government? I mean, only world government can stop this from happening. I mean, it's only a matter of time till some crazy Arab country comes up with some race-specific bioweapon to kill, Northern Europeans or Jews or something. It's only a matter of time till the Chinese do this and release it on the Japanese because they've got race-specific weapons that will kill certain subgroups. Certain subgroups have certain genetic markers. You could develop, they've bragged, and I'm sure they have, race-specific bioweapons that'll kill just one African tribe. That's why Israel has been studying race-specific weapons, and I've seen white papers on it that have been published publicly by scientific journals, that Israel doesn't want to use them because, well, quite frankly, if you're a real Jew, I mean, really Semitic from that area, you're basically have the exact same genetics as the Palestinians or the Arabs. I mean, it's the same people. Well, you see, but because of most of the people that came back into Israel, they're really, in most cases, three-quarters European, with the blonde hair and the blue eyes. That really is kind of the ruling class over there. They even have a class system. Jewish writers have written about this. And so they don't have to worry. And so what if it kills a couple million Jews? The globalists financed Hitler to begin with. Because he helped bring in the New World Order, and a lot of big Jewish interest in banks went along with him at first, and that's been public because they're not really, they don't really care about the Jewish people. It's a very scary system, and this has actually been discussed by a lot of international publications. But again, we don't just have to worry about Israel; we have to worry about England, who's one of the forerunners in this. Actually, the Queen of England owns a lot of the stock in the companies that do this. We have to worry about the U.S. government and those interests. We have to worry about the Russians. We have to worry about the Chinese. We have to worry about the Japanese. We have to worry about the South Africans. Anywhere you have a high level of technological development, you can have this happen. But the most outspoken and forward-looking, you could say, in all of this has been Israel, and now Dick Cheney spouting off about how we need to legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons. So we have the New World Order crowd itself that sells people into joining it, that we have to have a tyrannical world government to stop bioweapons releases, but then meanwhile, it is the globalists developing these systems, building the factories, making it, proliferating it, selling the technology to these third world countries, chemical, biological, and nuclear, radiological. So time and time again, it was 3 years ago, the Australian government took a mousepox strain, made it 100% fatal, and then put out the recipe publicly, on purpose, published it with government approval on the university's website of how to take any mammal, take the mousepox, change it for that mammal, and create a pox that kills 100% of those that come in contact with it. Now, why on earth would the government of Australia release that? Why on earth is our own government doing this? Folks, why does the British, the U.S., and Israel, and it's been all over the BBC, you name it, why are they arming Iran with nuclear power plant parts? Why is our government arming North Korea, Pakistan? Why do you see this proliferation? You see, they want to not just use the threat of this crisis emerging to get total tyranny in world government. They want to have a controlled, specific release of this. And now it's over 50 top microbiologists in bioweapons treatment or development who could analyze and tell you where something came from, where it was developed, dying in airlocks, being run over by cars and then backed over, being shot in the head, being stabbed to death, being tortured to death in the case of a top Virginia scientist before he was killed. It's happening in Australia, Russia, Israel, the U.S., Canada. It's happening all over Europe. It's happening all over the globe, New Zealand, Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas. All over the place, they're being killed. And that is very scary, my friends, because who's getting rid of them? Why are they getting rid of them? Obviously, if you look at all the evidence, because somebody plans on using this. And I'm not trying to scare you, folks. I just want you to know what's really going on. And so the globalists use this threat to fearmonger and get people to morally go, well, we've got to be the most ruthless, the most cunning. We've got to have a dictatorial, face scan, world ID card, microchip population, because technology is too powerful and we'll destroy ourselves if we don't. But instead of making treaties and deals and paying countries not to and having them voluntarily do all this, which would work, and having it through real agreements, through a constitutional republic form of government, no, they're setting up a tyrannical world government while racing ahead to cause this cataclysm to take place. And I'll tell you the most scary piece of evidence when we get back. Running around saying we've got to have total power, no rogue nations, everything controlled, your life micromanaged, and they want to micromanage the general public down at your everyday level. It has nothing to do with the bioweapons, which they've produced, which they've distributed, which they've given out the recipes for. And then meanwhile, you read the globalist writings, and it's like something out of that James Bond movie Moonraker. Prince Philip, Ted Turner, Jacques Cousteau, the UN's population control system. We've got to reduce the population by 80%. No, 95%. I mean, this is openly discussed. Now, I've been years ago at cocktail parties with UT professors. It's like that's the discussion point. What about the people bomb, Mr. Jones? We've got to do something. China's doing what it has to do. This whole attitude, this elitist attitude. Oh, you're part of the elite. You're with the global government. You're going to be safe through all of this. And so we have the globalists producing all of this, saying let's legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons, is what Dick Cheney said. By the way, that's not just been on their own website. It's been the London Guardian. Michael Meacher, that was the last straw for the environment minister when he resigned in England. He said, look, if you didn't do 9/11, you had prior knowledge of it. And by the way, you said you want to use race-specific bioweapons. You people are psychopaths. And he pointed out where they said it. So, I mean, this is incredible stuff, folks. But the biggest, scariest point is not just that they're out promoting that they want to get rid of 85 to 95% of it. It runs from 80 to 95% in different estimates. That's not the scariest part. If you live in Switzerland, within a few miles from your house is a giant luxury bunker with 2 years of food and water, its own air cleaning system, tennis courts, weightlifting facilities. If you live in Russia, they have nice bunkers for you. If you live in China, they have nice bunkers for you. Not as nice as Switzerland. I grew up in Dallas. Do you know where your fallout shelter is? It's in the local parking garage. They can clean the dead bodies out in the spring. But no government has spent anywhere near, even on budget. And there's the black budget, the secret budget. Nothing to do with black people. Sometimes I get an email. It's never a black person. It's always some white yuppie going, yeah, talk about black funding. Black budget means secret. Black bag, dark projects is what they're called. Just side. I have to do that, folks. I know the general listenership's smart, but some people aren't. They think, But anyway, side issue. These black budget, secret, shadow systems. But just the public funding of the U.S. government since the 40s is the highest of any nation out there, just like all our other military spending. Giant underground bunkers, giant railway systems. They admit there's one all under Washington where members of the House and Senate publicly ride these little trains around. They've got them all across the country. They've got them all under Fort Hood here in Texas. They've got them going up into Canada, going into Mexico, huge underground cities and bunkers. And there's a race right now to build them. You think the Cold War is over, everything's fine? There's a race, even before 9/11, and now accelerating. They're radically expanding these. They've got huge underground locomotives that can just cut through 4 feet of solid rock an hour, honeycombing the country. And seismographs all over the nation have picked these up, this slow grinding hum that they know is the signature of these tunnelers. So they're building these giant luxury cities for the elite. I guess the 20% they're not going to kill, or the 5% if it's Ted Turner's estimate. And they're doing all of this. And by the way, even Reuters and MSNBC and the New York Times have reported how billionaires are all buying private islands with security and electric fences in the Caribbean. and how they've got jets always fueled wherever they're at, ready to fly out of the nation. And then right during 9/11, Bush runs to Moffett Air Force Base in Nebraska and meets with all these CEO leaders. I mean, they were all meeting earlier that morning before Bush even got there with Warren Buffett and all these top CEOs. I mean, this is sick, folks. And they throw a lot of what they're going to do to us in our faces. I was talking to a school teacher yesterday, and he said, the news is entertainment, and the entertainment is propaganda. Again, the news is entertainment, and then the TV shows are propaganda. And he's absolutely right. But, an MI6 agent wrote the James Bond books, and in Moonrakers, you have this Illuminati leader who wants to kill the world population to save the environment, and, so he releases this bioweapon, and they barely stop it. But I mean, this is how they throw it in your face. And the latest one is about bioweapons and people wanting to live forever and kidnapping people to take their glands. Well, that's already going on, folks, for real. While they're growing these cloned babies to get their brain tissue and want the aborted babies. But the point is that truth is stranger than fiction, and these psychopaths are handing out these weapons. Like they're pop guns or something, and they know this global crisis will bring in the New World Order. 9/11 is just the setup for all of this to get you ready. All right, my friends, your calls are coming up here in just a few minutes. Dan, Louisiana, Andrew, California, and many others. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. I've been talking the last half hour about race-specific bioweapons, weaponized bioweapons, you name it. Weaponized biologicals, I should say. And just recapping before I go to the next level of this is the recap for those that just joined us. The globalists say we've got to have world government because they can't have any rogue nations or rogue industries or companies, because now the technology is readily available and the human genome published, which is a real good idea, I guess, by the federal government, in concert with the eugenics promoting IBMers that control half of it. But we've got to have this world government to contain this. Well, here's the problem. The globalists are psychopaths who openly say they want to get rid of 80 to 95% of us. And on top of it, they're building all these giant underground bunkers to protect themselves and the elite. Foreign countries give the public access to the bunkers. America doesn't. The average American, who doesn't even know these exist, though it's public. A large portion of them are public. And then you say, well, a race-specific bioweapon, it wouldn't have a way of spreading, wouldn't have a way of getting to everybody. Well, here's the problem. If you have a race-specific bioweapon or you have a general bioweapon release and it starts killing hundreds of thousands, millions of people, it will cause nationwide panic, total breakdown of society. We're not the people of 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago that know how to skin a buck and run a trot line, that know how to farm and garden. And things will rapidly implode in on themselves and will break down into bedlam. Now, you can be assured that whatever bioweapon the globalists release, they're going to have an ironclad cure for it for themselves and their forces. But you're saying the globalists would never get away with that. Their own people would blow the whistle on them. Well, that's why now 50-plus top microbiologists, either in the treatment of bioweapons or the development of it, who can tell you who produced a bioweapon, have been dying very mysteriously, being murdered, being tortured, being butchered, being run over and backed back over publicly, dying in airlocks, dying in plane crashes, being drowned in an inch of water when their car flips, and witnesses see men in dark uniforms standing around them, and Dr. David Kelly with men in dark uniforms standing around him, and mainstream news now that he was murdered. He was the head of Porton-Down Bioweapons Lab. And let's just say the government's, angels. They're still producing. They've got all these bioweapons labs, level 4 and even level 5s, even some above that level. And we've had cases where this stuff has gotten out in Russia, gotten out in China on purpose. In England, they released the weaponized foot and mouth, just a blurb in Sky Television News and a few newspapers like the London Guardian and Telegraph of 4 years ago. That was used to kill off most of the cows and sheep. Then I predicted the government wouldn't let people restock their cows and sheep, which they did do, and then forced the farmers to sell so big agribusiness could take over. So they could release this on accident, or someone could steal it and release it, but guaranteed that's not going to happen. Well, they may claim it happened on accident. And now under Bush's BioShield program, they're going to build, and are building, 36 of these to, quote, study and treat it. But they admit these are really bioweapons production labs to create thousands of gallons, as the Baltimore Sun said, of liquid death. And then we've got Dick Cheney and the PNAC documents saying we need to legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons. And the PNAC document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, September 2000. We have globalists who we've caught putting cancer viruses, not just in SV40, but in other vaccines, 250 times. I've been saying 215 times. I looked it up again yesterday. They took the mercury out of some vaccines, but in the mandatory ones they really push, they went up to a higher level, 250 times safe levels, and that's now posted on prisonplanet.com in the bioweapon vaccine section. And we have a global government that's been caught in Africa, Latin America, Asia, from the 50s into the 90s, putting sterilization hormones into the vaccines for the women. I mean, this is all posted on the website right now. Henry Kissinger in 73 telling 5 most populous third world countries sterilize half your population by force or no IMF and World Bank money. That was declassified in 92. That's on the website, the actual CIA documents. So we have these nutcases saying, give up our liberty, we're going to protect you from this, while they set up the entire system, the whole technological control grid, to basically herd us and control us during these purposeful releases. And you're saying, well, people in government won't go along with this. That's what total information awareness is about, everything tracked and traced. And believe me, those NSA computers aren't set for talk of bombs and you know, Alibaba. They're not set for discussions of cocaine and heroin. They're set for discussions of people finding out and talking about race-specific bioweapons. They're set for FBI agents talking to their wife about how the government had prior knowledge of 9/11, so they can send some nice boys out so that FBI agent has a car wreck tomorrow. That's what NSA is set for. That's what the real control grid is. And they've just got a few hundred top people listening and tracking all of that, and then another mass off in just tertiary intelligence operations. Because there's no real terrorism, my friends, that isn't globalist control. We've proven that. And so now they say by 2012, most of the Air Force will be drone. That's right, most of the Air Force will be drone. Refueling, the jets, the fighters, surveillance, drone. So see, they're now going to come out, the new scientists reported, with automatic control gates and robotic cones that block highways automatically, and the face scanning cameras on your street corners and the roads. All of this can be controlled by computer programs. You can set the program up for what you want it to do and turn the computer loose, and literally just a few people can control hundreds of drones taking off with the bioweapons, spraying the cities, doing whatever they want. This is all being set up. Total information awareness is about protecting the globalists while they commit their crimes of bid rigging and scamming and sucking Pentagon funds dry of over $1 trillion. It's meant for economic espionage and spying on their competition, and it's meant on protecting them and building up a grid where just a few hundred people can wage war against the entire planet. And then the little compartmentalized technicians loading the spray canisters on the drones will just think it's one of the thousands of public tests they've had of, quote, bioweapon preparedness. And then once it's done, once the crisis has started, the globalists just have to retreat to their bunkers and watch the havoc unfold. Now, people, this isn't a science fiction movie, and this isn't a joke. And I've given you in the last 40 minutes exactly the plan, unless we stop these people.